then the path is slowly but progressively traversed and the ultimate goal is achieved. When a person knows the goal of life, but is addicted to the fruits of activities, he is acting in karma yoga. When he knows that the goal is Krishna, but he takes pleasure in mental speculations to understand Krishna, he is acting in jnana yoga. And when he knows the goal and seeks Krishna completely in Krishna consciousness and devotional service, he is acting in bhakti yoga or buddha yoga, which is the complete yoga. This complete yoga is the highest perfectional stage of life. A person may have a bona fide spiritual master and may be attached to a spiritual organization. But still, if he is not intelligent enough to make progress, then Krishna from within gives him instructions so that he may ultimately come to him without difficulty. The qualification is that a person always engage himself in Krishna consciousness and with love and devotion render all kinds of services. He should perform some sort of work for Krishna, and that work should be with love. If a devotee is not intelligent enough to make progress on the path of self-realization, but is sincere and devoted to the activities of devotional service, the Lord gives him a chance to make progress and ultimately attain to Him. Tesham sattva-yuganam bhajatam kritipurvakam didami buddhi-yogam tam yenamam upayanti te. To those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So as mentioned by Prabhupada in the beginning of this purport, the most important, or rather a significant word in this verse is buddhi yoga. Buddhi refers to intelligence. Yoga refers to the process of connecting with the Supreme. So there I should go slower?
That's okay. He says it's okay.
Okay. Buddhi refers to the process of utilizing one's good brain substance in conjunction with good knowledge that one has received from other sources, and utilizing the both together for expanding one's spiritual consciousness. It is not very difficult to become Krishna conscious. However, the process must be accepted as it is, and it must be accepted by one who has a good intelligence. Actually, Krishna consciousness is only understood by those with a good intelligence. It is not meant for the less intelligent class of men. But even if one is not terribly intelligent, and I don't think that many of us would put ourselves in the category of being terribly intelligent. So Krishna says, if you at least serve me with love, constantly devoted to me, constantly engaged in thinking of me, then I give that intelligence by which you can come to me. Even if you cannot do it on your own, then I will give just for your enlightenment. In the previous verse, Krishna talked about certain classes of men. In the beginning of this verse he said, Tesham. Tesham means unto them. And also refers to those personalities who Krishna was describing previously. What were their qualifications? Matchita, matkita prana, bodhayantascha parasparam, kathayantascha mam nityam, tushanti cha ramanti cha. In this verse, Krishna explained matchita. always thinking of me. Madgita Prana, surrendering one's life to me. Bhodayantascha Parastaram, always discussing amongst each other about Krishna. Kathayantascha Mam Nityam, Krishna conscious topics. Sushanticha Ramanticha. This is very pleasing and satisfying to the self. So, Krishna has described the qualification of one who is capable of loving him completely. When we speak of love, we don't speak of some idle or void type of emotion. If you say that I love somebody, yet you never do anything to serve that person, don't give any flowers, don't take somebody to eat something, or don't speak nice words, then the love which you profess is cheating. Real love is manifested in terms of service for the other party. And actually, this love that we experience here in the material world is a perverted reflection of the love that we experience in relationship to Krishna. Our natural constitutional position is to be a loving servant of Krishna. That is the nature of all persons, all living entities, not only just persons, but also plants, animals, even these flies who are constantly landing on us and driving us crazy. They too are also Krishna's parts and parcels. And even though we may not appreciate them very much, they are also Krishna's, so therefore we do not kill flies either. But all living entities are Krishna's, and all living entities have as their basic constitutional position the loving relationship with the Lord. However, this is forgotten amongst all those who are in the species lower than human beings, and by most of the human beings as well. Although the human being has by nature more intelligence, or rather an intelligence which has the capacity and potential to understand his natural position as Krishna's servant, but he unfortunately misuses this position. This is the problem. We have this basic intelligence to understand Krishna in the human form, but we also have the propensity to misuse it when we are in Maya, the illusory energy of the Lord. We misunderstand what is our natural position. We think that it is to render service to this body, and we forget that our natural position is actually to serve Krishna. Sometimes Krishna helps us remember this. Krishna is situated in everyone's heart, and from him comes remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. So sometimes the living entity forgets that he is Krishna's eternal servant. And then the Lord, sometimes from within the heart of such a conditioned soul, inspires him with some knowledge how to surrender unto the lotus feet of the Lord. Now sometimes that inspiration comes strictly with knowledge, and sometimes that inspiration comes through suffering. Sometimes the living entity is placed into a situation which is not at all very nice. There may be catastrophe in his life, or he may not be very satisfied in what he does. Then such a person, feeling frustration with the material world, may surrender unto Krishna. Because, after all, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the only shelter. Otherwise, we have no shelter in this world. This world is a dangerous place. It is dangerous because there are all types of dangerous things. Not just because, for instance, you might have an earthquake and fall into a hole. That's also dangerous. And that also happens. But the real danger is not something which you can physically face. The real danger is to fall back into the lower species of life, or to remain bound, even in the human species. The real danger is ignorance. The real danger is the ignorance which binds the conditioned soul and keeps him in a position whereby he does not understand his natural position as Krishna's servant. This is the real danger. There are so many dangerous conditions otherwise. Birth is a dangerous condition, although less so nowadays. It's less of a dangerous condition because of modern medical procedures, but still, many times one's mother suffers very much or dies even because of birth. I know in my family, my grandmother died when my mother was born, and similarly, my sister almost died when her son was born. So we know that it's still going on. There's danger at birth. What to speak of danger for the child? Nowadays, you're lucky if you take birth. There's something like a 50% chance you get aborted. Millions of little babies are killed in the womb every year. Actually, it is interesting. The official duration of life is, at least this is American figure, I'm not sure if it's a larger world figure, is around 74 years. Up from 71 years of about 20 years ago. However, they don't take into consideration all of the children which are killed in the womb. So if you take into consideration these children, the average duration of life is something like 54 years. So in other words, duration of life is reducing on the average, including all those children who were killed in the womb. So it's certainly a dangerous thing, even to take birth, or to try to take birth. Of course, it's not up to us. We are placed in a womb. We are placed in this situation. It is not our choice. But according to our karma, or according to the desires of the mother, child may be killed. Birth and death, nobody can deny death is a dangerous situation. No matter how you die, nobody likes it. Death is not what we call a pleasant experience. It's not that bad. I mean, at least we devotees understand. Death is, after all, just a change of bodies. For the one who is dying, it's not so terrible. He simply leaves this body and goes to the next body. But for those who have to observe the other person dying, it's pretty terrible. It's like if somebody is killed in a car crash and he's all mushed into a little package. So we look at this and we're just horrified, how terrible. But for the person who got killed, he was probably killed instantaneously. He just left the body and went off to his next body. For him it was not terrible. It was just another activity that took place and is finished and gone. But for us, who watch that, wow, we think, how horrible. Of course, death itself is not the problem. The problem is how you die. because disease may be there. Nowadays, there are so many sophisticated diseases to kill you. Now they are finding this AIDS is coming like anything. They are scared as anything of this AIDS, the scientific community, because they cannot find a way to cure it, and they do not think a cure will come soon. So it causes all kinds of problems up to the point of death. There are all kinds of very ferocious cancers that one can get, and certainly having a heart attack is no fun. So it is not actually the death that is so much the problem as the way you die. If one dies by severe disease or disturbance like this, then it is very painful. So that is also very dangerous in this world. And old age, in and of itself, is troublesome. It is not that old age is very blissful. It's troublesome. There are so many problems in the body. The bones don't work very well, the joints don't work very well, the teeth don't work very well. Sometimes the teeth aren't even there anymore. The liver doesn't work very well. The stomach doesn't work very well. And one even forgets sometimes, just from old age. So, this is no fun. And these are only the tip of the iceberg of problems. How many problems are there in the mind? Somebody said something to you. Somebody stepped on your glasses when you were sleeping. Problems that come in the mind are just very practically intolerable. Therefore, more people go to psychologists, psychiatrists, social welfare workers of all types, and just to somehow get some relief from the distress they feel. In this material world, everything is a source of potential distress. But some things are also a source of potential pleasure, and therefore we somehow manage to tolerate the distressful things. But if one is fortunate, the material world becomes a little too much for him. And he realizes that there's no happiness here. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, Dukkalayam ashashvatam. This place is a place of suffering and a temporary place. Now someone may say, you're just being negative. It's actually very nice in the material world. We say we're either talking to somebody who's totally an illusion or is a liar. We have seen in normal everyday dealings that sometimes people present themselves as great enjoyers of the material world, when actually, mainly, it's pretty boring in the material world. And anyway, material world aside, someone may be fortunate enough to get some inspiration somehow or another to surrender to Krishna. Someone may, not everyone, but someone may be very fortunate. Manushanam sahasreshu kastiti siddhaye yatatam apisiddhanam kastit veti mam tatvataha. What is that fortunate person? Well, out of many thousands amongst men, somebody may be searching for what is truth. Out of many thousands of men, you will find most are concerned with what is money. Where do you get money? Where do you get enjoyment? Very few are concerned with where do you find truth? Where do you find something spiritual? Most, 99%, are concerned, much more than 99%. Almost everybody is simply concerned with the body. And out of 1,000 persons, or many thousands of persons, you may find one who's interested in something spiritual. Now, we're not talking about just plain old religiosity here. whereby one prays to God and asks Him to give us things. My dear God, please give me things. No. We're talking about somebody who's actually looking out for what is the truth. In other words, he's setting some goal. He wants to find what is truth, and he reaches out for that. So, such a person is considered to be a special person, because he's one in 1,000. But out of 1,000 such persons, if you collect all these ones, put them together, then you get another 1,000 of them. One of them may be able to understand what is Krishna. Not so easy to understand Krishna, because he's beyond even the fruitive, mental, speculative mentality. Some persons, they may want to understand what is truth, but they like to do it also because it gives them sense gratification. In a discussion with friends, they can show how much they know. Or they may like to speculate a philosophy and even write a book. And amongst people in general, they may be very much worshipped. This is described in the Mahabharata as Tarka Pratishta Steo Manaso Vibhinam Nasho Ishir Yasya Matam Nabinam. That in this world, you're not recognized as a great philosopher unless your philosophy is significantly different than everybody else's. Otherwise, then you're just a simple follower of somebody else. To be a follower in the modern world is considered to be low class. And to be a creator of a philosophical system, this is considered to be very nice. Then other persons follow you. You become master. But this is the same disease that we find in this material world that has kept us all here in the material world since time immemorial. And that is the disease that we want to take the position as if we are the masters. We are not masters, we are servants. But when we maintain this idea that we are master, we remain in the material world because this material world is the place where all of us masters, in quotation marks, stay. We are not masters, but we think we are, so we can stay here. Because this material world is a nice place to think you're the master. But actually you're the servant. Therefore, the idea of being a great philosopher and having others follow one, and arguing with other philosophers, that's what Tarka means. I've got a philosophy, and you've got a philosophy, so I have to defeat your philosophy with logic, and then you will accept that I am very great. But the philosophers, they never accept each other. No matter how much you defeat somebody, he'll not accept that he's defeated. And as long as you don't accept you're defeated, you're not defeated. Even if you are completely defeated, logically and philosophically. But if you don't accept it, what's the value? But in this material world, this type of argumentative logic, it's called, this is not very valuable. And the real secrets of knowledge come by being a good follower of that which has been given by Krishna. Dharmasya tattvam nihitam guhayam mahajana jena gataksapanta. You don't find truth by arguing. You find truth by following in the footsteps of those who know. And who knows? Well, Krishna knows. Krishna is called Adi Guru because he's the original source of everything. Aham sarvasa prabhavo, mata sarvam prabhatate. I am the source of everything. From me, all creation flows. So if everything flows from Krishna, everything is coming from Krishna, then all knowledge also comes from Krishna. In fact, that's why he is called Sat Chit Ananda. Chit potency means knowledge. Everything comes from Krishna, including all knowledge. And that knowledge descends from Krishna in the line of this authorized disciplic succession. The authorized disciplic succession. Krishna is the first authority. And he presents this knowledge to Lord Brahma. Lord Brahma presents this knowledge to his son, Narada Muni. Narada Muni presents this knowledge to his disciple, Vyasadeva, who writes it all down for all of us, teaches it to Madhvacharya, and gradually it descends through the human society. And today we have gotten this knowledge by the grace and mercy of our spiritual master, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. So we know that knowledge is coming in that very carefully preserved disciplic succession. Just like, for instance, if one wants to pick certain kinds of fruits from very big trees, like in India they have jackfruit. You have jackfruit here? No jackfruit, son. Too bad. Anyway, jackfruit sometimes become very big. They're very big fruits. So the tree is very tall. To cut the jackfruit and bring it down, you have to do it by passing it from one person to the next. You can't just cut it and falls and smashes. So you must take it and hand it to the next person. They also pick mangoes this way, one by one, and they hand it down, or they, of course, put it in a basket and bring it down. But there's also a system of handing down. So when it's handed down carefully, doesn't get bruised, doesn't get broken. It doesn't get broken, it doesn't get ruined. So, similarly, the disciplic succession is like that. The disciplic succession is the knowledge is handed down carefully from one generation to the next. And when one hears knowledge from such personalities, then one becomes enlightened with a transcendental knowledge which can illuminate the heart and destroy the dense darkness of ignorance which resides within. This dense darkness of ignorance is there in this material world, everywhere, throughout the whole of the surrounded. Throughout the whole of the material creation, the dense darkness of ignorance is there. And the living entity who is trying to surrender to Krishna must battle with this ignorance. You know, when you are in a community, for instance, of persons who don't want to know something, it's very hard to learn that thing. You must be in association, for instance, of those who want to know. For instance, if you're born in an association of atheistic personalities, just like, for instance, Prahlad Maharaj. He was the son of the biggest demon, Hiranyakashipu. And in that household, in that town, in that city, nobody was allowed to speak about the Supreme or have anything to do with the Supreme. Nobody. Yet still he became Krishna conscious. But that's because he was Krishna conscious from birth. Otherwise nobody else could ever become Krishna conscious in such an atmosphere. To become Krishna conscious, you have to be in the association of other persons who are also Krishna conscious. This principle everybody understands. If you want to be a good musician, you can't really do it unless you play with and associate with other musicians. If you want to be a good physicist, you can't really do it unless you're in the university with other physicists and you are discussing the knowledge together. So association is the topmost important aspect of successful accomplishment of one's development of knowledge. What happened? I said, you forgot? For the successful accomplishment of one's purpose. Anyway, to move on. The purpose of one's life can be fulfilled if one is actually engaging himself in hearing from those who know the science of Krishna consciousness. Therefore, we want everybody to read, study, understand these books of Srila Prabhupada. For within these pages, all knowledge necessary for the living entities is given. All that we need to know in relationship with the Supreme is there. If one simply speculates, he'll not actually come to any proper conclusions. Anyway, if one speculates, he does not come to the point of actual knowledge, but rather his speculation is always just a guess. Even if he thinks that his guess is very good. I think our translation is not so great back there. None of the girls speak first class English? English German? No? No? Thomas Chinese doesn't know English now. German I'm sure, but English not. Maybe we should import a translator just for some days. Because it's tough for me, when I say a word and then I hear another word back there. Then I think, uh-oh, what are you all listening to out there? That's the problem when you have to listen to a translation in a language you have to know. And you can find all the mistakes. So we should get another translator. So. The Chai is coming, maybe. He's very good. Oh yes, very good. So come on, anyway. House Chant is like 20-year-old tractor. We want a nice Mercedes. Alright, where was it? A guess. You know what a guess is back there? Huh? What's the word for guess?
Raten.
Raten?
Raten.
Eraten.
Yes, raten or eraten.
Oh,
Same.
so he said. Okay. You're lucky. If somebody makes a guess, and who's listening to chant? Wer hört diese Übersetzung in ausländischen Englisch? Wie ist die? Huh? Nishla. Exactly. Okay, maybe get another chance. Okay. So, Prabhupada says here in the last paragraph of the purport, a person may have a bona fide spiritual master and may be attached to a spiritual organization, but still, if he is not intelligent enough to make progress, then Krishna from within gives him instructions so that he may ultimately come to him without difficulty. The qualification is that a person always engage himself in Krishna consciousness and with love and devotion render all kinds of services. So the real quality which attracts Krishna the most is not actually intelligence, although that's very valuable. It's not actually hard work, although that's totally important. But it is that one should render whatever service he's rendering to Krishna with love. That's the really important thing. After all, Krishna has so many things. He's got the whole universe. All opulences are there. He doesn't need what we give him. He's already got everything. But one thing he doesn't have, and that is our love. Because we are misers. Miser means somebody who's stingy. Yeah? He doesn't want to give to others. So, we are not wanting to give to Krishna our love. We are holding it back and focusing it on our own selves. We only love others so much as they give us sense gratification. Especially in Kali Yuga, why all marriages are breaking up. So many marriages. Why divorce rate is so high. Because people get married only because sense gratification is there. And if later on they find that sense gratification is diminished, then they divorce. If there's no longer sense gratification, then they go away. People simply are interested in that which gives them satisfaction. And they don't really think in terms of others' satisfaction. Therefore, real love is not actually found in this material world. But when we develop our real love for Krishna, then that loving relationship is devoid of all desires for sense gratification. And we simply think of the satisfaction of Krishna. Of course, when one is thinking of the satisfaction of Krishna, then that automatically makes us satisfied. Because our satisfaction and Krishna's satisfaction are intimately connected. Unless Krishna is satisfied, there is no question of us being satisfied. And Krishna is satisfied by our loving relationship with him. And really, that is the number one main ingredient in Krishna's satisfaction, is that love. Even if you are very poor, and you can only offer to Krishna a glass of water with a tulsi leaf in it. After all, who cannot offer that to Krishna? Everybody can. But if that's offered with love and devotion, Krishna says, I accept it. Krishna accepts the love. It's like that famous example we've told you many times of the devotee who was in so much loving ecstasy that he wanted to offer a banana to Krishna. But he was so much absorbed in love that he could not keep his senses together. So he offered the peel and threw away the banana. And Krishna accepted that because it was offered in such love. How could he refuse? So, certainly we don't want to offer Krishna banana peels. But because it was so lovingly done, was very much determined to satisfy Krishna, and Krishna is very pleased by that. Even some small little thing can satisfy Krishna. Whereas if one brings presentations to Krishna and he's very proud, he's thinking Krishna will be satisfied with my gifts because I am so great, and Krishna may neglect you. The real thing which attracts Krishna is that love. That is also coming from humility. When one very humbly presents to Krishna in love. Something presented in real love is not presented with pride. Because pride means one is thinking mainly of oneself. But if it is presented in real love, it's presented humbly for the satisfaction of the loved one. Now in the material world, these things are practically unheard of. Maybe in the romantic stages of one's relationship, just like in marriage, there's always the honeymoon. Then everything is very romantic, and all of these feelings of loving emotions are there. I don't mean to want to cast a doubt upon these things, but factually speaking, compared to love of the Supreme, all of this is just comedy routine. Sentimentality. Real love is when one is very much absorbed in simply satisfying that personality who we love. And there's only one personality who's capable of being the worshipable object for all men in all times and all places. And that is Krishna. Because Krishna will always reciprocate our loving relationship. Another person may not do so. We may have seen in the material world, this is always the subject matter for so many stories, that you love somebody, but that person doesn't care about you. That person cares about somebody else who doesn't care about her. Everybody's looking to this one who's looking to that one, everyone's looking like this. Before getting married, these are generally what goes on amongst the teenage class of men. And like this. So it's always like everybody's reaching out for somebody. This frustrating business is there in the material world. So many novels are written about this, movies are written about this. So there's one point. How to find love. The whole material world is actually looking for it. Everybody wants to love others and be loved. Even big demons like Hiranyakashipu wanted to have loving relationship with their wives and children. Because love is natural for everybody. The problem is that real love means love of Krishna. And that is very rare to come by. 1 of a million may come to the point of loving Krishna. Very rare. Because that is the real love. And mainly, that is very difficult to attain because we are so much absorbed in ourselves. Material selves. Body. Making the body look nice, making it famous, making it strong, making it rich. These are main considerations in this world. Some are interested in helping others' bodies. But the real attachment, the real thing, which is the most progressive knowledge, that activity which brings one to the highest platform of love of the Supreme, the love of Krishna. It is beyond one's own self-interest. In fact, it is the real self-interest of the living entity. The real self-interest is to love Krishna. Because when we actually develop our love for Krishna, then that is for us the best self-interest. So we should learn this art. You may not learn anything else in this world. That's all right if you learn this art of loving Krishna. Because as Krishna says in this verse, if you at least learn that, I give you all knowledge that is required by you from within the heart. From within the heart, I enlighten you as to what actual knowledge you require to come back to me. So, one should not worry too much about anything except loving Krishna. And if one is not loving Krishna, one should worry like anything. Why? I am so fallen in this material world that I cannot understand my natural position in relationship to the Lord. Why am I thinking myself the Lord or the controller? When I can see clearly, I'm not the controller. If I was the controller, would I have weather like this out there? Of course not. I'd make it nice and sunny, and all night long I'd have it rain. And then when it's time to wake up, I'd have the rain stop. And then I'd let the sun come out again. Very nice. Unfortunately, I'm not the controller. And therefore, miserable, terrible days like this happen whenever I come here. Maybe you've noticed. Every time I come, so comes this. Anyway, but that's good. Now we know for sure we're not the controller. We're just the servant. But Krishna gives that knowledge. Even if one is not intelligent enough to understand he's not the controller. So Krishna just makes your life miserable until you understand. But that's mercy, that's good. That's not bad. If one gets to the point, then it's great. And if one spends his whole time of life suffering like some animal and doesn't understand Krishna, well then, he may have just wasted his whole life. This suffering condition is actually meant to make us understand what is our actual position. That we must know. And then all success in life will come. So let us get to the point of surrendering to Krishna. Then we'll be happy. Beyond that, there is no happiness. Are there any questions?
Krishna says, ich gebe dir das Wissen und die Intelligenz, wenn du mich mit Liebe und Hingabe ständig verehrst, mit dem Wissen kommst du zu mir. Was ist dieses Wissen? Ich verstehe nicht, aber eigentlich, das ist ja schon nicht also Bhakti Yoga, nicht? Also Krishna mit Liebe ständig verehren, das ist es schon eigentlich. Das ist nicht so das Ziel.
Knowledge can manifest in many ways. One can understand how Krishna is the source of the whole creation. One can understand the material elements as being part of Krishna's energy. One can understand things that happen to him as Krishna's arrangement. This is also knowledge. And that knowledge can bring one back to Krishna. So it's that type of knowledge which Krishna gives. Above all, he gives that knowledge which illuminates the darkness within. Clarifies the bewildered condition of the living entity, fixing him in the service of the Lord. Yes?
You spoke about old age. What's the chance of for old people with Krishna consciousness?
Excellent. It is very hard to become Krishna conscious when one is older, because generally I have heard from psychological studies that by the time one is 35 years old, he becomes fixed in the ways he thinks and does things. And it's very hard to break. that starts at 35. You can imagine by the time one is 60, 70. It gets very, very difficult to do new things. So those who are older and who do come to Krishna are very, very special persons. And they should always be offered all respect. So we have found that it's very difficult for an older person to surrender to Krishna. So when they do, that means they're very, very lucky. And in fact, they have a great chance to go back home, back to God. Because after all, what do they have to be attached to? I once initiated one 80-year-old lady. So, mother of a devotee. So I asked her, I said, what are the 4 regulative principles you're going to follow? So she said, no eating of meat, fish, and eggs. No gambling. No intoxication. He said, as far as illicit sex is concerned, there's no possibility anyway. So old age has its advantages. Has its advantages. Actually, in the Vedic culture, there's a statement which says, Panchasardvam vanam vrajet. At the age of 50, get out of the house. Go to surrender to Krishna. Take vanaprastha, means you go to the forest or you go to a holy place and perform service there for the satisfaction of the Supreme Lord. Like here. So, actually it's the Vedic injunction. One may say, but 50 is still young. I can still enjoy. But the Veda says, no, out. But that's in the Varnashram system. Up to the age of 25, let's say, or 20, one may be working as brahmachari under the direction of spiritual master. Then one gets married, has his family, up to the age of 50. By that time, the oldest son can take charge of the mother, your wife, and then the man goes off to the forest to engage in spiritual life. Not forest doesn't mean you just start walking around in the trees. It means you go to the holy places. Like the sages, they had their places in the forest. Like monasteries, today you would call them monasteries, ashramas. So, at that time, one would take up fully spiritual life and forget about the material, well, not forget about it, but understand the material existence is not our natural position. So factually, in the Vedic culture, the position for the older persons was that position of spiritual life. And in fact, without the older persons taking up spiritual life, the whole society would fall apart. It was very essential. They are the elders. So it is the elders' duty to give to the young people the accumulated lifetime's knowledge that they have received. They've understood through this life that this material world is not a very nice place. And that one must surrender to Krishna, because anyway he will be forced to at the time of death. So that knowledge should be given with great realization to the younger person. Just like if I talk to a group of young people about the miseries of old age. They laugh. Yeah? But if, for instance, you were to talk to the young people about the miseries of old age, they take it seriously. Because they say, well, he must know what he's talking about. Right? So that is actually the duty of the older person, is to give their realized knowledge to younger persons. That is very important in the Vedic society. Of course, in Krishna consciousness, that would mean one has to know what is the spiritual philosophy. But at least this practical knowledge can be given, practical affairs, until one learns more of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. But the practical knowledge can be given about, first of all, the sufferings inherent in one's own body. Second of all, the difficulties in the material world. And third of all, also just plain old good sense, how to act in the material world. How not to waste your money, how not to make bad investments, how not to be a fool, how not to put yourself in dangerous conditions out of youthful, lusty desires, etc. This is very important. So actually, one of the biggest problems in our Krishna consciousness movement is that we don't have any old people who've lived through it. Yeah? It's still young. Maximally, we are in spiritual life 20 years old. We've been around it maximally in spiritual life 20 years. This kind is 20 years old. So, that's not very old spiritually. Although, our physical bodies may be much older than that. But our spiritual birth takes place when initiation takes place. So although you may be 50 years old, if you're initiated 5 years, you're only 5 years old. So maximally, we may be 20 years old. But this, what we really need is some old men. Then we can tell all the young boys, hey, what are you doing like this, wasting your time? And then the young people, they'll go, oh, just old men saying. But it's very important in society. Actually, a really properly running society has old people guiding young people, and teachers and brahmanas, of course. And then the parents are guiding the children. Very important. You never thought about that, did you? The role of old people. Isn't it? Yeah? No response. You thought he didn't think. What's the answer? Yes, no. Huh? No?
Thank you.
You think you'll be forever young, right?
Yeah, so.
Yeah, he thinks so. Isn't it? You too, isn't it? Forever, isn't it? You'll see. Ah, yes. Yes.
Yes, I used to look a lot for old people, for the experience, but the horrible thing in this society is that all these old people are always dreaming about their younger days.
Yes. Well, now you're talking about material society. In material society, of course, old people still have a role to play, but it's not very great. In the material society, what they do with old people is put them in some house somewhere. They put them all together in some house and forget about them. The children. Unless you have some money yourself, you can take care of yourself, you get put away because you're considered useless. But it's in the Vedic society that the role of old people is very much, you've got a service for your whole life. Let's put it like that. Where in the modern society, your knowledge is considered a waste of time. In the Vedic society, it's considered very important because it's tempered with spiritual knowledge. And that deep realization can be given to others. Therefore, the only hope for old people is to come to Krishna consciousness. But the problem is, that's difficult. Because one's spent a lot of his time in youth wasting his time like anything. So it's hard to take up something new. But those who do have our deepest respect. That is a fact. Yes?
Mas thanks to the sixth sense can use the psychoanalysis.
That is a waste of time. Psychoanalysis is a complete waste of time. How somebody who knows nothing of himself analyze somebody else who also knows nothing of himself. So you have one ignorant person analyzing another ignorant person. And what do you think you get out of it? You get a third type of ignorance. But it costs you money. What he gets out of it is money, what you get out of it is illusion. In fact, nowadays, even the modern scientists are proclaiming psychoanalysis to be one of the greatest cheating processes in science. Big scandal going on now. in the scientific community. Articles are being written in the science magazines. Psychoanalysis. Is it science? 2 issues back in Science Digest, big respectable magazine. They say, is it science? Question mark. So we don't accept, scientists don't even accept it, what to speak of us. As far as we are concerned, it's complete cheating. Why, you think it's good?
Ich fühle mich gut, wenn ich gehe bei einer solchen Person, dass ich kann alle meine Sache erklären. Ich weiß, das ist dumm, aber das ist so.
Well, there is something to be said. There is something to be said about somebody who just listens to your problems. One may have so many problems that one may like to have somebody listen to them. Yeah. But we can hire somebody here if you pay them. They'll also listen. And they'll go, yeah. And when did you start feeling like this? We can have one devotee put on a beard, you know.
Weil ich gehe bei einer Frau, die ist geistlich und mehr geistlich, weil ich sage, ich mache Material, ich bin sehr depressiv. Und einfach, sie hat mich schon geholfen, weil sie hat mich auch in die Realität gebracht. Sie hat mir gesagt, ich war noch viel kindisch und ich träume viel und ich lebe mehr in den Wolken und ich komme nicht in die Realität. Sie hat mich geholfen auf diese Weise. Auch wenn ich sage, meine Schwierigkeit oder meine Träume und so, dann sie sagt, meine Probleme, sie sagt, die kommen auch von dem kleinen Kind war. Und sie sagt,
that, first of all, is mental speculation. Yeah, and mehr Geld bezahlen. We can say the same thing. Your problems don't come just from your childhood. They come from your previous lives. Not only last life, but thousands of lives before. Therefore, you're packed up with problems. So the solution is always the same. If you talk about your problems, you really think you're going to solve them? No. You can only solve problems by having a progressive activity. For instance, if your problem's in the mind, and you use another mental technique to conquer the problem in the mind, you've basically just got, again, mental speculation. In other words, you're just twirling around in your own mind. Chasing, like a dog chasing his tail. Using a mental technique to solve a mental problem. It's just like a dog chasing his tail. The real solution comes when you attack the whole problem, which is the contaminated mind and contaminated heart. When you do it by chanting, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,
Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
So if you actually listen to the Hare Krishna mantra, that will just cleanse away the problems in the mind.
Sie hat mir auch gesagt, weil ich habe ja gesprochen mit Karma und so, sie hat mir gesagt, ja, auf eine Weise ist diese Beeinflussung von Karma, aber es gibt schon etwas, das wir können wie spielen in diesem Gesetz von Karma, dass wir können handeln, wir können die Beste handeln.
Yeah, of course. So, obviously, we know about karma. So, you must also learn what we know about karma. Then you can understand it very nicely, instead of having to hear about it from somebody who doesn't know much about karma. Depends on who you want to be your authority. If you have still faith in the material world, well, good luck. One must have faith in the spiritual world. You can see the results of the material world.
Well, I think it's more important to surrender with all kind of problems to Krishna as to go to a psychiatrist and get all kind of things. That's the really surrendering, because Krishna can do something about it his own way.
That's right. Good testimony. You should make yourself qualified to accept initiation. Then, all of those problems from previous karma become cut. When the cycle of this birth and death is there, the spiritual master can cut that cycle. One must become qualified. And one doesn't become qualified going to a psychiatrist, that's for sure.
Also ich verstehe schon mit meinen Kräften, ich sehe, dass ich bin immer in diesem Kreis und ich mache immer die gleichen Fehler und so, weil ich habe nicht diese Kraft allein.
Ah, so where does the strength come from? One gets strength from surrendering to the disciplic succession, surrendering to spiritual master and Krishna. Alone you have no strength. Alone I have no strength. No one has any strength. We're all totally dependent on our spiritual master. Depends on who you want to be dependent on. If you want to be dependent on a mundane personality, you'll get a mundane result. If you want to be dependent on a spiritual personality, you'll get a spiritual result. Therefore, we are all dependent on our spiritual master. Yes?
Gibt es einen Unterschied zwischen Krishna und Ishvara, dem persönlichen Gott in uns?
Ishvara is only another name for Krishna. In fact, Lord Brahma says, Ishvara Parama Krishna. Ishvara means controller. So, Krishna is the supreme controller. Now, within our heart, Krishna appears as Param Atma. He's also a controller. But he controls in a very special way. He controls by overseeing everything we do and permitting us to do that which is according to our karma. So, Krishna appears in our heart as the Super Soul. But he has a different function. His function is to oversee and permit. Whereas Krishna himself is staying in the spiritual sky, enjoying with his associates. But one of his expansions, the Super Soul, enters into our heart. So he's also Krishna. But he is called Purusha Avatar. He's expansion within this material world for our sake.
Thank you.
All right. Hare Krishna. Mr. Mike?